Okay, so those are full body weight dips. Now, there are exercises and steps that you can take to build up to these.
So then, should we go through the progression?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be able to do dips.
Okay, so then the first thing that we're gonna do to start off is...
You guys are doing dips?
Yeah.
Oh, I just did it with my trainer. Oh, they're so much fun. Show us.
What the hell is this?
Dips? Where did you learn that? My CrossFit. You guys heard of CrossFit? That's awesome. Let's show it again. Guys? CrossFit.
Ordinary athletes helping you fit fitness into the busiest of lives. If you like our videos, share them, hit the subscribe button and that little notification so you don't miss anything. And it also helps us out a lot, so thank you. And today we're covering the topic, is CrossFit right for you?
The beginning prelude there was a little bit of a gag. Kat doesn't actually do CrossFit, although a couple of us have tried it before. But I just want to preface this video by saying that we realize we're traveling and wading into a deeply controversial and heated topic.
To CrossFit or not to CrossFit?
Christina's a little excited because she has her own personal CrossFit story that she wants to get into.
But before we do get into that CrossFit story, we know that CrossFit has taken some heat over the years by weightlifters and especially some bro lifters out there.
CrossFit places a huge emphasis on form and not needing it.
That does not make sense. Legit, it's like the equivalent of someone coming up to you and saying, hey there, I'm jacked and strong as hell, and my training strategy is CrossFit.
Shots fired.
But we want to point out that we're going to look at the question, should you do CrossFit, from the perspective of an xOA-er. So we know you're busy, you've got your family, you've got your life, you've got your activities, your friends, your work. You might even be a beginner in the fitness game and you're trying to find ways to fit fitness into your life. So what do? You go on YouTube, you search for your favorite channel, Extraordinary Athletes.
Of course.
And then you let us help you figure out whether CrossFit is right for you.
There's a lot of people out there who do CrossFit, and you've probably heard of it a bunch, but I just want to say at the onset, none of us intend here on bashing CrossFit. That's not the point of this video. We actually have some friends who do CrossFit, swear by it, and got in shape with it. But what we do want to do is just give you 4 tips to consider when you're trying to decide whether or not CrossFit is in fact right for you.
Why do we hear so much conflicting information about CrossFit? Well, one answer might be variability. There doesn't seem to be one uniform way that the CrossFit gyms are managed and run. So everything from class sizes, trainer involvement, and also the beginner's training period. These can make a CrossFit experience very, very different depending on which location you choose to attend. This is why you could have a friend who loves their CrossFit experience and just wants to tell you all about it and wants you to go as well.
CrossFit! Have you guys heard of CrossFit?
Or you could have a friend who had a terrible CrossFit experience. So the main point here is that all CrossFit boxes, that's what they call their gyms, are independently run. So you may end up with a trainer who actually knows their stuff, or somebody who just took a weekend course. But considering that CrossFit includes and borrows from Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, gymnastics, and even cardio circuits, and considering that they do include high intensity workouts, you might want somebody who really knows what they're doing. Some of these moves and routines are very complex and they can take a while to master. So having the wrong trainer can be pretty problematic. We've even heard anecdotally that at some gyms, the trainers push so hard without properly evaluating their clients that on the first day, those clients end up throwing up.
Ew!
And now it's time for me to tell my story. Something you can take into account when you're trying to decide which gym is right for you is, do they focus way more on speed than they do form? So do they even sometimes sacrifice form for the sake of speed. So many CrossFit routines really focus on speed, and that can be a really integral part of the sport. But this is where my story kind of comes into play. A couple of years ago, Al and I and a few friends, we went to a free training session at a CrossFit gym. None of us had any experience with CrossFit, but we just wanted to try it out for fun. Right from the start, our CrossFit trainer pitted us against each other in a routine. So after maybe 5 minutes of explaining what CrossFit was, we had this routine where we're all going to be competing against each other for speed, and there was no discussion of form. So we weren't too concerned about that part at the time because all of us had experience doing squats and pull-ups and push-ups and all those kinds of exercises that comprise the routine. But it was a little concerning because our trainer didn't know that we knew how to do all those correctly. So that's one red flag that was raised. The routine was just focused on speed, and there was no accounting for the fact that we all had different abilities. So, for example, myself, I'm your typical xOA-er. I get fitness in as much as I can. And Al, for example, he's someone who does a little bit more working out and is a bit more of an experienced xOA-er. And one of our friends who was there is actually like a competitive cyclist who has some serious cardio happening, and there's no way I'm even close to that. But we were all pitted against each other. Do these as fast as you can. And then within like 30 seconds of finishing the routine, first I was super pumped and like high fives even though I was in last. But then within 30 seconds, I felt terrible. I thought I was gonna pass out. I had that like rushing sound in my ears. I had to sit down and put my head down. I thought I was gonna throw up, so I had a bucket in front of me and it smelled like garbage because it was a garbage can. It was terrible. So it was just this really bad experience that came from that, all from this weird need for speed, and I didn't feel like I got a good workout out of it at all. And it wasn't just me who felt that way. Another one of our friends who's really fit himself, he also thought he was gonna pass out.
I kept it together.
Yes, he did keep it together. The main point we're trying to tell you here is if you see these red flags where they're focusing solely on speed and they're not taking your ability into account and they're not taking form into account, definitely something you want to consider, especially if you're a beginner. Form before speed, before everything else. You have to get that right, avoid injury, avoid feeling like you're going to pass out, and you'll have a much better experience.
Third consideration, let's take a look at proper form. Now let's address the big elephant in the room here. Apart from sacrificing form due to speed, there's also a separate issue, and that's the fact that a lot of people have argued that some of the moves in CrossFit are themselves inherently bad form.
The kipping pull-up. CrossFit has revolutionized fitness by teaching the correct way to do an incorrect pull-up. 1, 2, 3.
We're talking about kipping. Now, at the very beginning of our video here, you saw Kat trying to perform a kipping dip. She was showing it to us. But the far more controversial move is probably the kipping pull-up, or even its relative, the butterfly pull-up. Now you can see with the kipping pull-up, what's going on here is you're utilizing momentum and this swinging movement in order to make the pull-up easier, which is kind of what you've probably been told for a lot of exercises that you should avoid for proper form. And in the case of the butterfly pull-up, well, this one just kind of looks like madness. Okay, so what's going on with these moves? What are they? What are they all about? First off, let's just point out that these moves have been the target of a lot of ridicule in the fitness community. And we're not here to pile on to that. But what we do want to do is put these moves into perspective a little bit. First off, studies have looked at the kipping pull-up. What the studies have shown is that the kipping pull-up actually reduces the amount of muscle activation in the upper back as compared to a standard pull-up, while at the same time allowing the exerciser to perform far more reps than they otherwise would have with the standard pull-up. And those two issues aren't exactly unrelated. So the biggest problem that we see is that in order to increase speed and reps, you're essentially abandoning the eccentric portion of the lift, the negative. But that's problematic because the eccentric portion of the lift can be very significant in helping to build lean muscle mass. And in all honesty, a lot of clients that we see, it's probably something they should be focusing more on, not abandoning entirely. Well, the eccentric portion of the lift for a pull-up is, once you've come up, that's the concentric portion, slowly coming down and controlling that movement on the way down. That would be focusing on the eccentric portion of the lift. Now, the eccentric portion of any lift, whether you're doing bicep curls or whether you're doing tricep kickbacks or whether you're doing pull-ups, have been widely accepted as being significant contributors to muscle development, and they really increase the effectiveness of any of the sets that you're doing. Now, we're not saying that there's never a place in anyone's routine for, varying it up a little bit and including cheat reps or partials or anything like that. In fact, when you hit plateaus, including some of those things can really help out sometimes. But very rarely are you ever going to have cheat reps or partials or any of those types of tricks and moves take the place fully of full proper reps and sets. What do we do with all of this? How should we view the kipping pull-up? Well, instead of just disparaging it, let's try to realize its proper place in fitness. And we actually think James from Shredded Sports Science, which by the way is a great fitness channel if you want that scientific information, he frames this issue very, very well.
CrossFit is a niche, powerlifting is a niche, bodybuilding is a niche, certain body weight groups are a niche. There are many niches within physical fitness, and in essence they are all extremes. Powerlifting, no powerlifter is going to tell you that powerlifting is an optimal all-around health performance discipline. The same with bodybuilders, and I think the same has to come in with CrossFit. These are extremes, they are people who are dedicated and passionate towards a specific goal.
Yes, these moves could place you at an increased risk of injury, especially the butterfly pull-up. And yes, they do decrease muscle activation, specifically in the parts of the body that you think you're working out with pull-ups. They ignore and they abandon the eccentric portion of the lift. But the other thing that they do is they increase the number of reps that you can do at a much faster pace, which is something that's very important to CrossFit competitors and enthusiasts alike. But it's probably best to view this move, the kipping pull-up, or any of these moves, the butterfly pull-up or even the kipping dip, as incredibly efficient movements specifically for the sport of CrossFit. But that means that it's probably best reserved for those people who are trying to improve at CrossFitting specifically. But for all of our xOA-ers out there who are trying to just find ways to get a little bit fitter or fit fitness into your busy life, maybe take a step back, take a look at the risk-reward ratio of some of these moves, and then decide whether it's really worth it for you.
Now let's talk about safety. And there are many topics that we can cover in terms of safety in CrossFit. But for the sake of brevity, what we're going to do is just introduce to you some key concepts that you have to keep in mind. And the first concept is what Christina was talking about, which is this obsession with speed and even volume at the expense of form. Before you start out any workout, it is recommended that you nail your form. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that even when you have the perfect form, when you introduce an element of speed and volume, you can make an exercise that is safe now inherently dangerous. Now, why is that? Well, it doesn't matter who you are, how well you've trained, how strong you are, how much time you've spent nailing that form. After fatigue, your form will break down eventually, and this especially is true when you introduce that element of speed and volume. And it was well documented that in the 2017 CrossFit Regionals, there were lots of muscle tears. And I'm talking about lots. Now, a lot of devoted CrossFitters rush to the defense, saying there's a huge difference between the competitive side of CrossFit and the sports side of CrossFit. And that may be true, but if there are a lot of serious and similar type of injuries coming up even in the midst of competition, it's time for a little introspection. So now let's look at some studies. What did they say? Well, here are some key takeaways for you. The first one is from a recent 2018 review that concluded, current evidence suggests that the injury risk from CrossFit training is comparable to Olympic weightlifting, distance running, track and field, rugby, football, ice hockey, soccer, or gymnastics. Now that's interesting, but keep in mind that competing in those sports have their own high risks associated with them. Now for your typical xOA-er, it may not make a difference that CrossFit is as safe as other sports that you don't participate in, like ice hockey or rugby or football. In fact, what you're trying to do is you're just trying to find the most efficient workout that's safe so that you can get fitter. Takeaway number 2. There's some suggestion that CrossFit specifically increases the likelihood of shoulder injury. Now, the evidence on that is not conclusive, but it is good to keep in mind that whatever your workout and your exercise regimen, don't be overusing a specific muscle group. And the third takeaway is that the probability of an injury decreases with the participation of a trainer, which takes us back to Urata's point.
The trainer that you get makes a huge difference.
That's right, not just for efficiency, but also in terms of reducing the probability of an injury. And there are also some studies that suggest that gyms that incorporate a beginner period or a beginner training period can reduce and even prevent the incidence of injuries.
So in sum, if you're looking to answer the question, should I try CrossFit? Specifically if you're looking to do it to get fit and get in shape, then we have 4 important considerations to take into account.
Number 1, variability. There might be a huge difference and pros and cons depending on the trainer and the gym that you find.
Number 2, speed versus form. You should be alarmed if you find a place where speed is highly prioritized over form.
Number 3, proper form. Make sure you're given time to learn proper form for any exercise you try.
Number 4, always keep safety in mind. Focus on good form, make sure not to overuse a particular muscle group, and be selective with the CrossFit gym you pick should you decide to try CrossFit.
And one quick tip for any of the CrossFit trainers out there that are just starting out, or any new trainers at all in the fitness industry. It's always a good idea when a new client's coming to you to take some time to evaluate and assess them. This isn't meant to sound condescending at all. It's something that I had to learn when I first got into coaching as well. And it can be hugely important to take some time and assess and evaluate where your client's at, both mentally and in terms of their fitness level.
We're just saying not all gyms or trainers are created equal.
And so in our opinion, CrossFit is best viewed as a particular sport. If you like it, that's great. You can meet new friends, you can have an entire community. But as with every sport, it comes with its own set of pros and cons.
Now, we're not saying don't try CrossFit. Our busy xOA-ers who are short on time, who want an efficient and safe workout, consider all the points we talked about earlier in the video when you're looking at CrossFit as a fitness regime.
So that's it for now. If there are any other workouts or routines you want us to take a look at, please let us know in the comments below.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe, and you'll never miss our episodes ever again.
Bye everyone.